With my experience and your ambitions, let's navigate the world of business, making informed choices and capitalizing on every opportunity. Welcome to Profit or Pitfall. This is episode 10, and we'll be actually doing a live request. Marc Henderson, a good friend of mine who is a financial planner. He's a market director here in Los Angeles County for Thrivent Financial for Lutherans. He has his practice, and that he is also a business owner, and happened to see a building for sale that was nearby one of his businesses and decided to reach out to me and ask me to figure out whether or not this is an actual profit or pitfall. So this is a $1.75 million suburban office purchase, and we'll walk through quickly the flyer that the brokers who have the listing are marketing. So this is a building in Granada Hills. If you're not familiar with Southern California, this is called the San Fernando Valley. It's North Los Angeles. Pretty nice area, part of town. They're asking $1.75 million for a building that's about 60 years old and offering about 4,700 square feet. It's about $372 a square foot. And if you notice here, and that's when you're looking at flyers, you have to kind of figure out, okay, what is my mindset and what is the flyer trying to tell me? So from Marc's perspective, this is, a potential investment. This is not something that he would own and use or like move his practice there or something like that. He's like looking at, there's supposed to be 5 or 6 tenants here. Tell me whether or not this is a good deal. And so you'll see here that the way this is being marketed is as excellent owner-user opportunity. So that means that out of these 6 tenants, they will have to at least occupy 51% of the building. So 49% of the units would need to be vacated. So we'll see if that works out or not. I'm going to look at it from an investment perspective because that's what Marc is trying to look at. And so we'll look here that they have a potential proposed financing of 30 years at 7.25%. Normally office buildings don't get that long of an amortization period unless it was owner user. If it was for an investment, it's going to be at 20 or 25 years, which means that the denominator gets smaller, which means your payment's going to be a little bit higher. So we're going to use that today based on what the client or potential buyer is looking for. 7.25 is about market right now. It could potentially be a little bit lower with a couple of lenders, but I've been quoting in the 7s, high 6s to low 8s, depending on location, quality, and what the story is with the property. So here, what they're telling you here is there's an existing $137,000 in change. They're using a vacancy of 5%. We'll talk about that in a minute. But at the end of the day, what they're proposing is that the NOI as of today is about $94,000, and that they're going to show you or propose that you can increase rents and get this higher in terms of your gross and your net operating income. So they're showing you here that you can collect just a hair under $12,000. You can get up to about $13,000 a month. Okay, and then they show you these estimated expenses. So if we take a quick look here, one of the things that I look at is kind of the quality of the tenants. So we are in a market right now where things are incredibly tough. If you are a real estate mortgage broker on the residential side, I'm seeing lots of businesses go belly up. I'm actually seeing a lot of businesses for sale because you have these offices that are now not being occupied because everybody's still working from home or not wanting to come back to the office. And literally selling their office equipment for just fire sale prices because they can't give it away fast enough. Or these brokers, these residential mortgage brokers, have licenses across the country, but because no business is happening right now, they're just trying to dump those licenses to someone else who could potentially use them in the future. So great opportunity to do something like that if you've raised some capital to wait out this market, stay alive till 25 is something you hear a lot. So that first tenant real estate mortgage, you'd want to find out, okay, what's going on there? How are they doing? Are they going to be around? There's law office, there's office space, which doesn't really tell you much, but it's a very, very, cheap and very small office, right? 232 square feet. A security company, This one is vacant, and then there's tutoring services. So when you look at the proposed vacancy reserve, one of the things that banks are going to do is they're going to hit you a little bit harder than that. So, 1 divided by 5, that's what, 20%, 18%. They're going to hit you harder because of this vacancy here in terms of what your actual NOI is going to look like here, right? So this number is going to be a little bit lower. And so that means your proceeds are going to be even less based on this assumption here, about $875,000 or half down. Okay. So there you have it. There is a vacant space. You have a tutoring service and another unit. It's fairly small. So these are, fairly small units, very probably local tenants, mom and pop, owner, small business type of tenants, a nice building layout. It's an older building, but in a very, very nice area of town. Looks like it's pretty well maintained. But as I've always told my clients, don't fall in love with the building, fall in love with the numbers. So it looks like, this is a fairly well-maintained building. Looks like there's the vacant unit there. This is the building right here. And it sits in a very nice residential community. So let's take a look at what the numbers really look like from a financing perspective and from an investor perspective. So what I did here was I've inserted the sales price and inserted the rent roll here. These are the in-place rents. And what I did was I wanted to figure out, okay, what is this guy getting per square foot today? Because even if you are have a story to tell that you're going to, make some repairs, or you're going to increase rents, which is what this particular story is. And that's this for me. I think this is where you kind of go back and forth about, what is it that you need to open your eyes to? You're proposing, owner user, but then again, you're raising rent. So which one is it, right? So you have to be able to kind of step back from, the shiny new object, like when you walk on a car dealership and you look at the beautiful new car and that new car smell, looking at the logic of, okay, this guy's telling me that, it's at $4,200 now he wants $4,760. Well, what does that mean in terms of actual increase? And can you really achieve that with your tenant? So for example, this office space now becomes a denominator issue, right? It's a small number. It's only 232 square feet. But is that office occupier going to support a 62.5% increase in rent? That's a lot of money, even though it's a small, space, right? From $400 to $650 a month. And then same thing here. So, a 53% increase in rent. And you can say, well, the market is $2.80. Well, that's fine. But is that tenant going to stay? Especially in a market where office is not getting a lot of love. There's a tremendous amount of vacancy right now. You're seeing buildings are being given back to the banks, or they're, so if they had a CMBS product on it, they're literally turning in the keys and saying, hey, I don't have any recourse on this. I'm walking away. So here for me is kind of a first red flag when it comes to, are these rents achievable if you were to be the buyer in place to take this down? So what I did was I took what was seen in the flyer and I pushed it in. Some of the numbers for me, I thought were a little light in terms of what they look like and what the bank is going to say. So for example, here they're saying that the owner would have no utility expense. It's possible, it's not a huge number, but you're probably paying for common area electricity. There's going to be some water usage. If you have a gardener, there's a lot of greenery in this property. If you see here, it's a beautiful, lots of green here. So it's, somebody's paying to water that grass, and it's not the tenants. You got some bushes there, and this beautiful tree there. So lots of green means you're spending money on water, more greenery there. So there's maintenance there. And so for me to look at this flyer and have where they're showing that there's no cost of utilities, I think is a potential problem. They've got some maintenance numbers in here, the trash, but you're definitely, a lender is going to say, we want to see the actual historical. So, I put in $15 a month, $45 a month for that, to be realistic about what you're walking into. There's your garbage, there's your maintenance. Now here's your management. Now, you can write in your narrative that, well, I'm going to manage the property. I know what I'm doing. I've owned real estate before, and that's great. But they're still going to want to insert a number because they're always thinking about worst case scenario, which is they're not going to manage the property if they have to foreclose. So they're going to insert a number. I put in 6%. You can see when you talk to property managers, they're going to take a percentage of the gross rents, anywhere from 4 to 12%, depending on the type of building, where it's located, what kind of trouble they're going to run into, and then the vacancy, right? So 1 divided by 6, 6 times 16 is 100% almost, 6 times 17. So you're going to get hit harder than just a 5% number, because you lose a tenant here, that's 16, 17% of your gross rents. And you got to be realistic about that, So I'm putting what I feel is a real number here, and then reserves, right? Something's going to go wrong, toilet's going to break, something needs to be replaced. If we have heavy rains this winter and something goes wrong with the roof, you got to pay for that, right? So what you'll see here is, kind of using a very typical 20% down is absolutely not going to cut it here. If you look here, the debt service coverage ratio, if you remember, in our last episode, we talked about what the debt service coverage ratio is.
Anyone?
Which is your monthly mortgage or annual obligation to pay your mortgage divided by the in-place NOI. And so you can see here, the bank's going to want to be at somewhere between 1.2, 1.3 for an office building, and we're barely at 0.55. So that means that this number is going to have to go up substantially, right? So I did 50%, and we're still at 0.89, right? I did 80%, so let's just say somewhere in here, so 70% down, 65% down, so 1.27. So let's say the bank's at 1.25, 1.2 to 1.25. So you're probably putting somewhere between 60, there you go. So let's say 62.5% down to make this deal work. So what is that telling you right there? You're buying a building at a 3.4 cap. If you remember what the cap rate is, right? You're taking the annualized NOI.
Anyone?
And you're dividing it by the sales price. 3.4%. And then if we look here, we're looking at our leverage. If we have a cap rate, even with the pro forma numbers, that we're going to raise the rents, right? And putting 60% down, 62.5% down, your analyzed return is 0.85%. or even 2.03%, and you're walking with negative leverage. If you remember what negative leverage is you're looking at what your cap rate is versus what your interest rate is. And I didn't even fix that. So let's assume 7.25%. So now we're having to put even more money down. So, this is where it gets really tricky. Let's do 67.5%, 1.27. So somewhere in there is what you're putting down. So to make this deal work, if you're going to buy it at 1.75, which is what they're asking you to buy it for, you're putting $1.2 million down. And you got to think about your down payment, your closing costs, right? There's some things that, come into play to make this deal work to actually close. When you look at your sources and uses, if you look back at our last episode, we walked through sources and uses. A lot more money that is involved just beyond the purchase price. So if we scroll down here, what I did was I did a little bit of a sensitivity analysis. If we look at the NOI that the seller is saying that this property is generating at the moment, and don't forget that when you buy a property, the property value resets, at least here in California. So he or she may have a low basis. So this number is really irrelevant at the end of the day. And what we have to look at is what is the real annualized NOI right now. So if we, put this 59,419, holy moly, look at that. From a investment perspective, this property is not worth more than $800,000. You have to go back and look at, okay, well, what would it cost me to, replace this building? They call it replacement value. Kind of irrelevant here if you can't generate any type of return based on the money that you have to put down. So I would say this property is a pitfall. Maybe you could have potentially make this work if you were going to be an owner user in this space. Based on the design, it doesn't look like it really allows for that. But if somebody was trying to be creative and just had the ability to occupy all this space, potentially it could work for an owner user where you're not using a cap rate per se, or, looking at returns. You're looking at a place to create a tax benefit for yourself and for your business. So this is a great example of how hard it is to find properties worth investing, where I don't think we could go back to the seller and say, hey, I know you want, $1.75 million, but how about $800,000? They probably would laugh at you and say, please get out of my office. So thanks for joining me on Profit or Pitfall. If you have a transaction, whether it's in commercial real estate or commercial business, feel free to look at the comments here and send your deal. And hopefully we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.